one last question. Can you tell us about the time that you found this young man hanging from a tree, how old you were, where you were, what the circumstances were?
Right. Yeah, you recall earlier I told you I had to go to different areas to try to get my education. One of those areas was in North Carolina. And we had gotten word that a young fellow was missing, and if we could, the fellows at the school could join in a search. And that was fairly common practice for the early 60s, late 50s. There were isolated areas of black men disappearing, if you will. So we were split up in groups. It was sort of a chilly fall day, Saturday morning. And the idea was that we would just go and see if we could find them. And the thing was that different groups, each one had at least a shotgun. It's a signal, because again, we didn't have radios and talking. So I was in this one group, and we heard the shotgun. And that either meant it was time to call it off, or something happened. So we rallied toward the shot. And I wasn't in front, because I'm 13, 14, maybe 14 at this point, young. And we crested the hill, and most of the group just sort of stopped. And I looked, and just like the pictures depict, was this body just sort of turning, if you will. And I started crying. I mean, I couldn't go back by myself, but I went with them to the group. And the only thing I can tell you is that we were relieved that it was clear that they had killed him before they hung him. Because I won't put it at the disfiguration of Emmett Till, but that rushed back to all my mother's, don't you do this, because all of that ran to my head when I saw that young boy, and they cut him down. And it was devastating.
Did you ever find out why he was lynched?
Because he was black.
How old was he, do you think?
16, 17 years old. He was young. Because he didn't go to the school where we were going to. He went to one of the schools in the county. Salem County, I think it was called. Somewhere in North Carolina. Lynchings weren't as commonplace in Virginia and North Carolina, but they occurred. Mm-hmm. Sometimes never even, just people disappeared. I don't know where he went. I guess he went up north, kind of thing. And that was probably at the stage they were for this. The family said, no, he's missing. Can y'all help me find him? And the fact that we went looking that way tells you that one of the expectations was that we would find him dead somewhere, or.
It was very common to mutilate the body. Did it seem like they had done that?
Yes, that's what I said. The only thing was I calmed myself thinking he didn't sit there and die with that rope hanging. That when they put him up there, that was more symbolic that he was dead or near death when they put him, because his socket was hanging out. It was all disfigured, and clearly his body had been just whipped and kicked and everything that you can imagine. Some of the stuff, when you see a Mississippi Burning type movie and see some of that depicted, they didn't have to use their imagination that much. Yeah. If that body that we saw was any indication of what brutality back in the slave days and whatever, I can tell you from what we saw that day. There was some of the older gentlemen they just started praying. And then,
how did that make you feel?
I came home. I left school. Told my mother about it, and I think I stayed home about a week and a half or two, and then they took me back, and she just asked me not to get involved in anything else anymore. Just focus on the school, and so forth. I listened for a while, but then they burned the cross on the campus, and we got going again. No, those were some terrible times. I'm sorry. There's so much stuff that was wrong. The cross thing. The kids that followed a protest in Henderson, North Carolina, when the sit-ins, and they pushed this guy. in the protest, and he did the right thing. He was an Army veteran too, and he didn't fight back. But the guy who pushed him delivered food to the campus the next day. And so he got his retaliation. Well, he got off campus, and then they came that night and started making noises around the girls' dorm, and then they burned the cross. So we said, we don't have anything to defend ourselves. Well, do you know we couldn't buy a gun anywhere? And we were young, but the older guys who were aged couldn't buy a gun anywhere in that area. They went as far as Raleigh, and they wouldn't sell them anything. So this guy we used to call Fatback, who was the building engineer kind of thing, he said, come on, ride me to South Carolina. I can get them there. So he called ahead to his buddies, and they had gotten, so we were going to go down and get these guns. Well, the wrong person at my dormitory answered the phone when my mother called. You know, is Jack there? My middle name. And I said, no, ma'am, he went to South Carolina to get some guns. Fortunately, I didn't have a cell phone. When we got back from Columbia, she was there to take me home again. But that was a kind of a fun trip. We laughed at it because nothing ever happened. We ended up having guns to defend ourselves. They never came back. But it was all around the time that when with the body and all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's like I said, it's great to be able to laugh at some of the events within the tragedy.
Yeah.
But bless her heart, they were very supportive. She was a nervous wreck all the time.
Yeah.
But it was good.
All right. Oh my gosh.